Good afternoon, Rotarians. Welcome to this Rotary Club meeting, and I hope you guys have enjoyed the summer because I think it's coming to a close soon. We're going to have a great program today, and as usual, we have plenty to do. So let's get right to it with Chuck Mann. Can you come up with the reflection, followed by Claudine with leading us in the pledge.
Desmond Tutu is a South African social rights activist and Anglican clergyman. He was the first black Archbishop of Cape Town. 35 years ago this month, Bishop Tutu was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The Nobel Committee cited his role as a unifying leader in the campaign to resolve the problem of apartheid in South Africa. Here are a few quotes attributed to Reverend Tutu. When the missionaries came to Africa, they had the Bible and we had the land. They said, "Let us pray," and we closed our eyes. When we opened them, we had the Bible and they had the land. We may be surprised at the people we find in heaven. God has a soft spot for sinners. His standards are quite low. And do a little bit of good where you are. It is those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world. Will you please bow your heads with me? Let us pray silently together according to our individual beliefs as we give gratitude for the opportunity to love one another and to overwhelm the world. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, Chuck.
Chuck, that was a great reflection. Thank you very much. This month, for the month of October, our meetings are being sponsored by Niehaus, Callis, and Hinshot. Thank you very much. Is Bob Amber out there? Sorry, Bob Amber.
President Tim, good morning. I'll be taking no questions today. We have two visiting Rotarians today. Visiting Rotarians, please stand as I read your name and remain standing until President Tim welcomes you. The visiting Rotarians are Scott Libby from the Perrysburg chapter and Do Win from Maumee.
Hey, Bob, before you leave, Bob Ambor is the pronunciation? Damn. Amthor. Okay. Nice to meet you. Do Nguyen is a past district governor and is with us today, as was just introduced. Do, would you stand for a moment and be recognized? I would like to invite members who have brought guests with them today to come to the microphone and introduce your guests, please.
Good morning or afternoon, President Tim and fellow Rotarians. I would like to introduce Mrs. Erica Hollida. Erica is the Executive Director of the Toledo Public Schools Foundation and a potential member.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, President Tim, fellow Rotarians. I would like to introduce a good friend of mine and guest, Dave Dorner, who is Executive Vice President with the Toledo Ticket Company. Toledo Ticket Company also was our golden ticket sponsor for the black tie event.
Welcome.
President Tim, I have two guests with me today. We have Jim Benor and Tim Croak, Croak Asset Management, Tim recently bought a building downtown and moved his business downtown Toledo from Perrysburg. So.
Jim and Tim, welcome both. Welcome to all of you today. I hope you enjoy the program. I know it's going to be great. Before we go too far, where's Candace? I saw her a second ago. Candace, you rocked last week at the meeting. Thank you. A few thoughts preparing for upcoming meetings. 2 weeks from today, we have Ann Lee Hussey, who's going to be presenting to us in honor of World Polio Day. That will be a big deal. The Mommy Club is shutting down, and we have Rotarians coming in from all over the district to hear her. There really are very few people in the world with her knowledge about polio. Shireen Merard is going to be on the radio next week. I don't know if you're here, Shireen, but she's going to be on the radio with Fred LeFebvre. Kathy wants to say a few words.
Thank you. Hey, I just wanted to inform everyone, if you don't already know, while I have your attention and the platform, that our own Toledo Rotarian, Katie Hahn, who may or may not be in this room, has taken a new position with Valpak. She's been a wonderful asset to our club. She's made so many things more streamlined, and I think we can all appreciate that. So I wanted to let you know that she is, although she's no longer in the office, she is doing a lot of work and will continue to do some work in the background until I fill that position. But I know no greater network or vast network than these Toledo Rotarians, and I want to make you aware that I am looking for a person to fill her position. I'm calling, I think it's administrator / communications coordinator. So if you have anyone in mind, I will post that job description probably in the newsletter this week, but please keep that in mind and let me know if you have someone you believe that we should talk to. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy. Doe, would you please come to the floor, Mike, and say what you did last Friday? The stuff you can talk about.
President Tim, fellow Rotarians, last Thursday, District 6600 was honored to invite Sri Lanka Ambassador to the United States, Rodney Pereira, at Toledo Club for a luncheon. And I want to take this opportunity to thank President Tim for his connection. Not only that, you probably remember that 2016, President Tim flew to Sri Lanka and started the chronic kidney disease, helping the people in Sri Lanka with the water project, $178,000. And the purpose of the meeting with the ambassador, he was here. He's graduated from UT, and he was so overwhelmed of the passion that our Rotary from Toledo Rotary and District 66 in helping his country with the water project and also the future peace project in Sri Lanka. So you all have to be proud of yourself and your club. And we hope that this club will continue helping the future project in Sri Lanka in peace and conflict resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doe. It's nice to be recognized for the good work that we do. This club and the $10,000 that we spent was parlayed into $178,000, and we went and used that money, this club, to provide clean water for 15 villages, and that's about, it's hard to tell exactly, about 16 to 20,000 people will get clean water, and because it's sustainable, forever. That's the power of Rotary. International Services Committee wants to make an announcement. Well, that's looking like Danny Woodcock.
And Mike Noble.
Mike Noble.
Good afternoon,
Welcome.
President Tim, fellow Rotarians. I just wanted to take a moment to invite everyone to our axe throwing event on World Polio Day. Thursday, October 24th, we will be at the Axe 419 axe throwing facility. We'll have appetizers out. They have a bar. We're asking for a $20 donation at the door to donate that to Polio Plus. I'm going to hand it off to Mike for a few more of the details, but again, take out your phones, your calendars. October 24th, Thursday, from 5:30 to 8:30. There's a video showing it. It's a lot of fun. Everyone gets bullseyes. It's guaranteed. It's located in Perrysburg, or Rossford, right at the Heroes Party Experience. They've reinvigorated their inside to be much more of a bar, appetizer, and then the backside has these lanes of axe throwing. There's 8 or 10 of them. There's a line you can't walk past without the lane officer letting you out. There's protective sides and a protective wall on the back so that the axe can't bounce too far back or bounce left to right, and only one person can be up at a time. So they've taken some pretty good precautionary steps in safety, but it is a lot of fun. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike for some more of the international services and the fundraising efforts.
Thank you, Danny. All right, so this is, we're following the same model that we do with the Mesa Bike Ride, in that we've got a fully paid-for event here that's being sponsored by the International Services Committee. We're welcoming everybody to come. It's open to the public, and so this is an opportunity to engage not only with your fellow Rotarians from the Toledo Rotary Club, but also from all throughout the district. So if you want to come out and engage with fellow Rotarians, if you're looking for an opportunity to bring people that might be Rotary curious, right? Some people that might be potential new members. And then also, if you just want to support a really good cause and also learn how to throw an axe, then it's something you should plan on coming out to. So thank you very much.
Okay, just a few thoughts. So I was talking to Cindy this morning as we were drinking our coffee, and she was a little snarly. And is it a good idea to bring her to an axe throwing project
Absolutely.
2 weeks from today?
Absolutely. First off, it'll be fun, and there's beer, so she'll be nice and calm. But second off, there's a lane officer who will orchestrate everyone who goes up. You'll be plenty safe, Tim. We'll give you your own lane on the side where we'll just put a picture on the bullseye so she can throw it at that instead. How's that sound?
She can be right after you. Thank you. So it's 2 weeks from Wednesday, correct? Thursday. And is this a fundraiser?
It's a fundraiser, so it's on World Polio Day, and this is another point that's worth making, is that the Rotary International Foundation is partnering with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and what they're doing is they're matching any dollars that come in 2 for 1. So really, you're getting a really good leverage on your contribution.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Tim.
Tim White, would you come to the podium and introduce the new member, please?
Good afternoon, Rotarians. Today I have the pleasure of introducing James Gaspard. James works for TPAM, a manufacturing and prototyping company which is headquartered in Japan, with a location here in Toledo. James serves in business development and project management, and says his work gets fast-paced and never boring. Brief background on James. I lived in Japan for 20 years and attended university there. He began his work at TPAM over in Japan, and they relocated him to Toledo to open the U.S. operation. He served in the U.S. military and the Marine Corps, and James was recently engaged, and his fiancée is currently living in Australia. He has spent the past 5 years in a long-distance relationship, and they are in the final stages in securing her U.S. visa. James's favorite music is eclectic. He told me he is a lyricist at heart and will listen to anything that tells a good story. When James is not working, he spends time with his 3 pets. He enjoys creative writing, salsa dancing, guitar playing, and spending time with his family. James's words to live by are, "The purpose of life is finding the largest burden you can bear and bearing it," by Jordan Peterson. A story about James while he was living in Japan. What he liked about Japan is the way that people living there see themselves as one, all working together to make a better community for everyone. Even in the wake of a natural disaster like the nuclear power plant meltdown of a few years ago, the people displaced from their homes were still recycling and sorting garbage in the displacement camps. And old retired men who used to work in the same nuclear plants were the first to volunteer as responders to the crisis, knowing full well it would likely shorten their lives from being exposed to that much radiation. They did it to spare the younger generation from a life cut short. And that sense of duty to your fellow countrymen always impressed him. Outside of Rotary, James serves in a Japanese outreach program in Michigan, helping newly arrived expats acclimate to the U.S. and find friends they can practice English with. He's also part of a charity focused on planting cherry blossoms throughout Ohio and the greater Midwest. James decided to join the Rotary because of his time in service, coupled with his subsequent many years spent abroad, which allowed him to see just what the world is like. He has been to beautiful countries with friendly and welcoming people and has been to places that could be fairly called a failed state. He says joining the Rotary and doing good in the community is just one way he is able to do his part in keeping this country a wonderful place to live. Please join me in welcoming James Gaspard to the Toledo Rotary.
James, welcome to the Toledo Rotary Club. You now have 440 new friends. Enjoy the club, join a committee, participate. Here's your pin, and this is the roster for all of your new friends. Welcome. This is for you. Good luck on your Rotary journey. Thank you. Kelly Tram, would you come to the floor mic, please?
Hey, I just want to take a moment and share with all of you why the Community Service Committee is the best committee in Rotary. When you join our committee, we already have a great group, but I'd look forward to seeing many more there. You get to have the opportunity to change the lives of so many people within the city of Toledo in our area. You get to help addicts who are recovering. You get to help people who are homeless build a better life. You're going to be able to help other organizations and nonprofits that are looking to solve our community's problems and issues. Plus, you get to hang out with a lot of cool people. I invite you to come to our next meeting and join as we talk about our next upcoming grants that'll be coming up and as we explore more community service activities. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. Made me want to join community services. You do a lot. Could I invite Kathy Mikulajic to the floor, to the podium, please, for a presentation?
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Toledo Rotary Club Foundation, it is my pleasure today to present a grant check in the amount of $4,000 to TMA, the Teen Apprentice Program. This grant is providing funding for the Teen Apprentice Program. Our Youth Services Committee members received the request, participated in the vetting process, and made the decision to recommend the grant approval to our club board and foundation trustees. It is due to the countless Toledo Rotarians who give unselfishly, which enables us to provide these grants. Thank you to everyone who continue to support our Toledo Rotary Club Foundation so we can continue to aid in supporting the needs of our community. I'd like to invite Maria Eifeles with TMA, the Teen Apprentice Program, to come to the podium and accept the grant and share a short description of how our foundation gift of $4,000 has helped their organization.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for the support of the Teen Apprentice program at the Toledo Museum of Art. It's really meaningful to have local support for this program. Since 2015, the program has had about 32 youth participate, and what they've done is come to the museum, learn more about museum careers, and then designed events to welcome their peers to TMA. That's been about over 750 youth have come to those fun teen nights, everything from DJs in our Baroque gallery to an open mic night on the campus. So really thinking about the museum in new ways and engaging new audiences. This support is going to allow us to open up this program. It's been in partnership with the Toledo School for the Arts since 2015, but this year we are looking to engage with youth from schools across Toledo. And this will really give the youth the needed exposure and experience that they need. One interesting thing I should mention is that not only am I thanking you all, but I should also thank the teens who have participated in this program, because they've really pushed not just myself, but also the museum to think in new ways and to understand the need for high quality art education in Toledo. So thank you all, and for those of you with teens in your life, November 15th is the next teen night at the museum. They're still in the process of planning, but there will be some music and art activities. So thank you all.
Thank you, Kathy and Maria. Next, we're going to have a short video brought to us by the Buffalo Soldiers. And Walter, if you're ready to roll it.
When the Civil War began in April of 1861, it was not legal for men of African descent to join the Federal Army. African Americans were serving in the Federal Navy, but they could not join the Federal Army. It was not until July 17, 1862, when Congress passed and President Lincoln signed into law the Militia Act, that African Americans were allowed to join the Federal Army. In 1862, regiments were organized in Kansas, South Carolina, and Louisiana. These regiments would be engaged in mostly small unit operations and engaged in combat in 1862. However, it was not until January 1, 1863, in the Emancipation Proclamation, that President Lincoln issued an order to his field commanders to receive men of African descent into all armed services of the United States. The Bureau of United States Colored Troops was established on May 22, 1863, with General Order 143. Active recruiting of African Americans began on a national scale in the South, in Union-occupied territories, and in the North. In the Western Theater, African Americans would fight in May of 1863 in the Battle of Port Hudson, the first major battle in which African American soldiers are engaged. In the Eastern Theater, African American soldiers would prove their mettle in the battle at Fort Wagner. 54th Massachusetts would lead the assault, the failed Union assault on Fort Wagner. African American soldiers by the spring of 1864 would become a major part of those Union operations in Virginia. Under General Ulysses S. Grant, they would fight in the battles at Petersburg, and they would go on to earn distinction, with 15 Medals of Honor being earned in the Virginia Theater. And at Newmarket Heights, in September of 1864, they would capture the closest point captured to Richmond to that date. And they would go on as members of the 25th Army Corps, the only Army Corps in American history to capture Richmond, Virginia. African American soldiers would serve throughout the rest of the war, earning the respect of their generals. An Inspector General report that inspected a regiment out of Mississippi, the 3rd United States Colored Cavalry, reported that the superior status of that regiment was a reason why Negroes should serve in the active service. It was their service in the Civil War that leads to their enlistment in the regular army. In 1866, 6 regiments of African descent soldiers were established in the regular army. 4 infantry regiments, and 2 cavalry regiments. When the Army was downsized in 1869, 2 infantry regiments would remain and 2 cavalry regiments, and these soldiers would go on to earn fame as Buffalo Soldiers.
Good afternoon, friends. If you haven't heard, our club has formed a peace committee inspired by the research that violence acts like disease. It spreads. Just like disease, the way to eradicate violence is to interrupt or disrupt its spread. When it comes to polio, we use immunizations. But when it comes to violence, we need people like this man here, an interrupter of violence. Mr. Earl Mack has been actively serving the Toledo community for over 40 years and is currently serving as the president of the Toledo Buffalo Soldiers Motorcycle Club. It's much more than what it sounds, so I hope we're at the edge of our seat to learn about it. In addition to this role, he is an instructor for the Ohio Peace Officers Training Council, Owens Community College Law Enforcement Training Center, and the Ohio State Highway Patrol Training Academy. Previous to and throughout his 32 years spent in law enforcement, Earl has received extensive education and experience in crisis intervention and public service. Here are some highlights. Mr. Mack, a Vietnam veteran with the United States Army, is a graduate of the University of Toledo, the University of Louisville's Southern Police Institute, and Lord's University, all focused on criminal justice and law enforcement. From there, he expanded his training at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center located in Georgia, conducted by the U.S. Department of Justice Drug Enforcement Administration's Narcotic and Dangerous Drug Law Enforcement. Earl then went on to complete the United States Department of the Treasury's Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Undercover Investigative and Bomb Threat Training course. Earl graduated with the 21st class of the Ohio Peace Officer Training Program, and as Ohio's Deputy Director of Ohio Homeland Security, he was trained by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security in their National Incident Management System and Incident Command Center operations under FEMA, as well as active shooter training. Under the same federal agency, he was trained in managing the Automated Critical Asset Management System, which monitored the protection and security of over 9,000 critical infrastructure sites in Ohio, as well as the protection and security in the supply chain related to agriculture and the transportation sectors. He's a member of Fraternal Order of Police, the National Black Police Association, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the Ohio Association of Security and Investigation Services, the American Legion, University of Toledo Alumni Association, University of Louisville Southern Police Institute Alumni Association. In the past 2 years alone, Earl has received the 2018 National Law Enforcement Officer Distinguished Law Enforcement Officer Service Award, the 2018 National Law Enforcement Officer Hall of Fame inductee, the 2019 Jefferson Award, the 2019 Medical Mutual of Northwest Ohio Outstanding Senior Volunteer Award. He enjoys motorcycle riding, firearm competitions, and old cars, owning a 1969 Lincoln Mark, which I have no idea what that is. In Earl's words, I believe that to be successful in the protection and security of our communities and within any organization, it is essential to have a genuine collaborative partnership with those affected in the private and public sectors. Earl is joined by Ms. Melanie Clark, who is serving as a vice president of the Toledo Buffalo Soldiers, and Mr. Fred LeFebvre, who serves as the organization's public information officer. Please join me in giving them a warm welcome.
I couldn't have done any better myself. Anyway, hello everyone. Well, we're here to talk a little bit about the Buffalo Soldier history. a little bit about a female Buffalo soldier, the only documented female Buffalo soldier, and a little bit about what we do in today's society as Buffalo soldiers here in our community. But first, in talking about the Buffalo soldier history, you know, we fought in a war, the Civil War, when black soldiers were allowed to be soldiers. And after the Civil War, we wondered, man, what are we going to do now? Because we were in slavery, as you know, we were taken care of. And lo and behold, a sign is posted that said, looking for black soldiers, colored soldiers. And I looked at my brother, I looked at my cousin and said, hey, would you like to join? $13 a month. Wow, $13 a month. That's a lot back then. So we decided to join and continue the fight. We were used in those days for stagecoach escorts. Remember the railroads being built and the expansion into the Western Hemisphere? They used us to protect the settlers. They used us to protect Indian reservations. They used us to take treaties to Indians, to Indian chiefs, and say, hey, look, it's in your best interest to enter into this treaty because the land, we wanted to share the land. A lot of Indians did not want to share the land. Not only that, we had citizens from Mexico coming up and raiding our settlers. And so they used us for a lot of things. Not only used us to carry treaties, not only used us to protect Indian reservations and protect our settlers, they also used us to go after renegade Indians that they couldn't control. So we did a lot of that. We were the first border patrol along the southern border. We were the first marshals. In those days, there was a lot of lawless cities because we were expanding west. And so they used us as the first marshals. Can you imagine all the discrimination we had to go through and to walk into some of those towns as black soldiers, and we had to have a commanding force to keep the peace? Just imagine that. So we did all of that. In 1898, they sent us to a place called Cuba, the 9th and 10th Cavalry. We went with Teddy Roosevelt. You heard of Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders, right? Well, guess what? There were two main hills. A hill that's called Kettle Hill. See, you didn't know anything about this. And a hill that was called San Juan Hill. Teddy and his Rough Riders went up Kettle Hill. The 10th Cavalry took San Juan Hill. We fought hard that day to take that hill. A lot of us died. A lot of our soldiers died on Kettle Hill, along with Teddy Roosevelt as well. Teddy didn't die, but a lot of his soldiers died. However, when they were done with Kettle Hill, they came over to San Juan Hill. San Juan Hill was already taken. Because the media followed Teddy Roosevelt around, they got the credit for it. 10th Cavalry didn't get the credit. And so we had to go through those things, but we loved our country. We wanted to continue to fight for our country. And we did, gallantly. We were some of the most decorated soldiers of its time. Some of the most decorated soldiers of its time. We took at heart to protect our community and our country that we wanted to fight for. We fought in World War I, all the way up to World War II. You ever heard of the Harlem Hellfighters? Read a little bit about them. World War II was really turned on what the Harlem Hellfighters did. It was really turned on what they did. So we fight and we serve this country with pride all through history. Our name, Buffalo Soldiers, the Indians, that came from the Indians. That was a nickname the Indians named us because the buffalo was a sacred cow of theirs. Sacred. If you know anything about the buffalo, when they fight, they will fight to the death. They don't give up. It's the same thing with us. We didn't give up. We fought, and we fought, and we fought. So that is a little tiny bit about the Buffalo Soldiers and that history. And we had our first female, the only documented female that we know of that fought in that war. And Miss Mel, would you come forward and tell a little bit about her?
Good afternoon. the first female that's documented. Now, other females fought in the Civil War, but mostly they hid themselves as females and then portrayed themselves as men. Cathay Williams, she was born in 1844. She was born to her mother was a slave, her father was a free man, so that made her a slave. She was born in Missouri. So in 1861, when the Union Army came through, whatever area they went through, fought, the slaves that were there, they were considered property of, so they were contraband. So they took them. So even though they were free from their masters, they still had to work with the Union Army. So as a young lady, she was 17 years old when she was taken. She went through Louisiana, Arkansas with the Union Army. She actually saw battle. And at that time, whatever job was available, she did cooking, laundress, helped the wounded. She still had to work. So at the end of the war, here it is, 1866, she's not sure what she's going to do. She's 22 years old now, a black female. There were no jobs. She's uneducated. She'd been with the Union Army, so she took herself, she went up to St. Louis, where now she can enlist. But she had to keep the secret that she was a female. And if you look at the uniforms, they were pretty baggy, and they took the Civil War uniform, and it didn't fit them. So at that time, they didn't do thorough medical exams, so she was able to cover that part, being a female. So she entered into it. They didn't realize it. She was good to go. So here she was now as a soldier. Infantry, she was 38th Infantry. There was two people that knew that she was in there as a female, her cousin and a good friend. Neither of them told anything. As time went on, she ended up getting sick. There was a lot of illness in the close quarters. She ended up with smallpox, but she was able to overcome that. In her time in the Army, there was at least 4 times that she was hospitalized. Not one time did they realize this was a female. So that lets you know what kind of medical exams they did. Not real good. So she was able to hide this for 2 years. Then they finally realized she was a female. She had made her way from St. Louis to Kansas, Fort Riley, down into New Mexico. So when they finally realized it was a female, they booted her out. So when Cathay Williams was booted out, she still remained at the fort areas to cook for the soldiers and stuff. Later on, she ended up marrying. She ended up in Trinidad, Colorado. And at the time, she never got over her illnesses. She ended up with as a diabetic, ended up losing majority of her toes. So her last stay in the hospital, they're not really sure because of the documents, around 1889 or so, that she applied for a medical pension from the Army because of all her illnesses. They denied her, of course. So they're not really sure. They believe that she passed about the age of 50 there in Colorado because they never saw her name again after the census. So with the medical, and she died pretty poor. A friend of mine in Colorado said that they believe they found some artifacts from an old building that might belong to Cathay Williams, that they were going to do a lot more research on it. And then a little tidbit, everybody talks about the hat. You see the little rebel hat that's real short. Well, actually, these are longer hats. They're called a gatherer. So the soldiers only carried whatever they had on. This is it, the pouch. So the hat here was used to gather fruit, vegetables, anything that they could, feed water horses for other people, put their water in, wash themselves up. So the hat had multiple purposes. That's why it's so tall. So, thank you. I'm going to introduce you to Fred LeFebvre.
Thank you, Ms. Mel. and thank the Toledo Rotary for having us here this afternoon. I'm going to try to tie everything together. One of the things that I've noticed in coming to Rotary luncheons over the last few months is your sense of history. I know that Tim and whoever is the president passes out a book to the guests that are here, the history of the Rotary. That's one of the things that as Buffalo Soldiers is prime for us. There are three things we do. We ride. I only ride a bike. They ride motorcycles. We teach our history, as you've heard some of here today, and there's certainly more available at ToledoBuffaloSoldiers.org. And we serve the community, much like the people in the Rotary do. We do it a little bit differently. We have a certain number of programs that we like to do on a regular basis. One is called What to Do When Stopped by the Police. We think it's of prime importance because so many of our members are ex-law enforcement and ex-military that on the street you comply and then complain. Comply now, complain later is our motto. When you're stopped by an officer, there are certain things you should do. And a lot of times kids don't get taught this at home. So we teach that class. In that car that you see on the screen, the children are told they're not to comply with the officers. You'd be surprised how quickly the kids carrying the weapons suggest that, can I just pull his ass out of that car? Because they don't like being not complied with. And then we switch roles so that they understand what it's like on the street. That's one of our main programs. It's part of our anti-bullying program that we teach in all the local schools. If you invite us out to your school, we'll come out and we'll teach you the anti-bullying program that Toledo Buffalo Soldiers do. That's based on shared experiences. One of the things that we like to do is take kids places. We find that maybe I don't know who Tim is, but now Tim has come out to a couple of Buffalo Soldier events. I've come out to a couple of Toledo Rotary events. We know each other now. We have a shared experience. Maybe we can be friends. We do that with the kids at the local schools also, the three that we've adopted. Martin Luther King Jr. Boys Academy, the L.P. Stewart Girls Academy, and also Pickett Elementary. We take them to Detroit Pistons games. Last week, we took them to Tim Sherman, who owns the Signature Harley-Davidson and Central Avenue Harley-Davidson, out to his horse farm, where kids from the Central City who have never seen a horse up close get to actually be with the horses for a couple of hours and ride on the horses and learn a little bit of history about the horse farm. We also mentor in the schools. One of the things that we'll be doing here with the Martin Luther King Jr. Academy in the next couple of weeks is belts for the boys. We've all seen the saggy pants. It's a sign of respect for us in Toledo Public Schools that your pants are up. If you talk to Dr. Durant about it, he'll tell you the same thing. You look good, you feel good, you're paying attention in class. We also provide skirts and shoes for the girls at L.P. Stewart. One of the things we did in September was disaster preparedness. That was Disaster Preparedness Month, and coming up on the 17th is the Quakeout, or the Shakeout, I believe it's called. Throughout the country, they're going to do disaster preparedness for earthquakes, and I'm sure some of you know this, not everybody might. We are on a fault line here in Ohio, so California is not the only place that has to worry about earthquakes. We do too. Over the course of the past few years, since I've been involved with the Buffalo Soldiers, we've responded to the water crisis in Flint by filling up 3 semis of water. We gathered so much water that day with the help of the Toledo Buffalo Soldiers, we actually had a semi we were able to send to the UAW for their water collection. They've done some great work. We also do education support. I believe what you're seeing right there right now, some of the kids from the MLK Academy. You saw our girls on screen a little while ago. The picture there is from Penta Career Center. It's part of our outreach to the Family House. It's the only place here in the city of Toledo that will actually take an entire family that's homeless so that you don't have to split up the parents and the kids. And we provide breakfast to them on a regular basis. And when their cook went down and had to be in the hospital, the kids from Penta Career Center stepped up, along with many of our sponsors who we rely on for everything we do, stepped up and provided meals for at least 3 to 4 weeks. We couldn't do any of this without our sponsors, of course. And we hope that somewhere along the road you'll join us on this journey as we work as hard as 11 people can. That's the only number we have for the members of the Toledo Buffalo Soldiers to get this work done. It's important to reach out into the community to touch the people that need the help the most. One of the things I want to be sure to point out, I'm sure we have veterans. In fact, I noticed you're a Marine, right? A Marine Corps vet. Come Veterans Day this year, for the 4th year in a row, as you know, if you are a veteran, you can probably go to a local restaurant and get a free meal. We serve the vets who are stuck at home. We have reached out to local restaurants and food service locations. We collect the meals and we take them out to those guys who can't get out of their house on Veterans Day to get a free meal. And I believe we're up over 300 meals last year, somewhere around in there. It's done so well for us that we're actually getting the 180th involved in it this year and may reach out as far as Lima, Ohio. Those are just a few of the things that we carry on that tie us to our history of service. Almost all of our members are ex-military or ex-law enforcement. Badger, who is sitting here at the front table, has 20 years in the United States Army and taught people how to take together and put back tanks. I don't understand half of what he says, but his stories are fascinating. As you heard, Earl served as a medic in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War, and we just recently have a probie, somebody on probation, who's part of the Oregon Police Force. So if you know someone who loves to ride, who loves to serve, and wants to share the history of the Toledo Buffalo Soldiers, I would encourage you to contact us at ToledoBuffaloSoldiers.org. Thank you. And we have one more thing that we would like to do. We know we appreciate you inviting us here, but we'd also like to show our appreciation for Tim. Earl has something he'd like to add.
Am I standing?
Yes, sir. When I met Tim, he's a brother from another mother, believe me. And we have broken bread together. We have shared some things together. And he recently had a birthday, and happy belated birthday. One of the things we wanted to present Tim today, not only with a birthday card, Tim, happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Is your Buffalo Soldier support shirt.
Oh, cool.
And we thoroughly thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, Mom liked me best.
We do have just a couple of minutes. Are there any questions from anybody in the audience about what we do, how you can join, or anything else? We'd be glad to take a couple. And then we want to get you out of here on time, of course. I promised everybody I would. Are there any questions at all? Otherwise, you can always hit us up afterwards. Badger knows everything about building a tank, so if you need that information, that's the guy to talk to right there. All yours, President.
Okay. First, thank you for the T-shirt. I appreciate it greatly. I'm honored to work with Buffalo Soldiers anytime. It's a great organization. Fred, Earl, Melanie, and thanks for you being here. We are going to do two things. First, that book that you heard Fred talking about, the historical tales of Toledo. I have one for each of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mel. And we are also going to make a donation to the Polio Plus Fund in your name and in honor of you being here today. That's our signature objective, to get rid of polio in the world. So thank you for joining us today. In 2 weeks, we're going to have Ann Lee Hussey here making a presentation to us. She'll be our keynote speaker. And I doubt that there are any other people in the world that know as much about polio as she does. She speaks and represents us to the United Nations. Same thing with the World Health Organization. I've seen her share a stage with the Prime Minister of India and ambassadors and leaders from all over the world. She really is, in many ways, our voice, and I doubt that there's anybody on the planet that knows more about polio than she does. 2 weeks. The Maumee Rotary Club will be joining us, plus we'll have other Rotarians from around the district. I hope you'll join us for that. I think it probably goes without saying that there is no meeting next week because of its being Columbus Day. And our Youth Service Committee is meeting in the Waynesfield today at 1 o'clock. The Peace Committee is meeting today in the Presque Isle Room. And the Finance Committee meeting is in North Cape. And with that, I'm told to wait because, where is Chuck? Is it going to be funny today?
I make you no promises. Before I do this, something coming up, we hope. The Membership Engagement Committee is sponsoring a trip to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. We don't know how much interest there will be, and we need to fill up a bus or two or more. But you will get an email within the next few days gauging interest in this event. It would happen on November 16th, which is a Saturday. We would leave about 8:30, drive to Cleveland, go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, lunch is on your own, and then we have a couple of other events that may be tied into it, and then maybe to Little Italy for dinner, and then back in the bus and back home. But it's November 16th. Cost should be around $65, and more information coming on that. My buddy was in a motorcycle accident, and he lost half of his foot.
Oh, come on.
It's hard to believe. He lost half of his foot, so now he's handicapped. He's still the same guy, but I can't hang out with him anymore. So I realized something about myself. I'm lactose intolerant. My friend Ruth rode on my motorcycle on the seat behind me. I took a bump at 95 miles an hour and rode on ruthlessly. And finally, a police officer pulled over two nuns riding a motorcycle and said to the rider, "Sister, you're driving much too slowly. Could you please drive faster?" And the nun says, "Oh, I saw the sign with 23 and assumed that the speed limit was 23 miles an hour." The officer explained, "No, ma'am, the speed limit is 60. The highway number is US 23. Then the police officer looks at the passenger and sees another nun shaking like a leaf as she clutched her rosary. "Excuse me, sister, but your passenger seems upset." "Oh, that's probably because we just got off I-280.
Thank you, Chuck. By the way, Chuck, for a full bus, you're going to require a full bus for this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
It's 25 people to a bus. So at every 25th person, then we reset and go to another bus. There are two buses available. And if we could get a big boy bus, if we get more people than that. How many people would be interested in doing something like that, getting in a bus and going to, okay, all right, scientific poll.
Thank you very much. One of the jokes made me laugh.
Oh, well, that's good. 1 for 3, I'll take that.
Okay, with that, this meeting is adjourned.